All right, strap yourselves in for a deep dive into one of horror's biggest showdowns, Freddy versus Jason.
Two of the genre's heavyweights going head-to-head.
Exactly. Freddy Krueger
The Springwood slasher.
taking on Jason Voorhees.
The hockey-masked terror of Camp Crystal Lake.
This movie had everything a horror fan could want.
Blood, guts, and two horror icons battling it out.
Now, this wasn't just some mindless bloodbath.
Oh no, there's actually a lot of strategy involved.
Like a psychological chess match between these two forces of nature.
Freddy, as always, is a master manipulator.
She's trapped, you see.
Powerless, actually.
The people of Springwood, they found a way to neutralize him.
They made their kids forget him.
No fear, no Freddy. That's the rule.
And that's where Jason comes in.
Freddy hatches this wicked plan to use Jason to restore his power.
Pretends to be his mother, Pamela Voorhees.
Convinces him to go on a killing spree in Springwood.
Brilliant, really.
Twisted, but brilliant.
Jason kills, fear spreads, and Freddy gets the credit.
Freddy needed a way to remind everyone just how terrifying he could be.
And what better way than unleashing Jason Voorhees on an unsuspecting town?
Now, where does all this carnage take place?
Well, where else? Elm Street, of course.
Talk about a nostalgia trip for fans of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise.
It was a smart move by the filmmakers, bringing us back to this iconic location.
Grounding this news story in a familiar setting.
Adding another layer to the whole showdown.
And it gets even more specific.
They actually used the same house where Nancy Thompson and Jesse Walsh lived.
Two of Freddy's most famous victims.
And now it's home to Laurie Campbell and her friends.
It's in that house where we see the first victim fall prey to Jason's machete.
Poor Trey, Laurie's friend, doesn't stand a chance.
Brutal. It really sets the tone for the entire film.
And you see the authorities trying to sweep the whole thing under the rug?
The police, they refuse to even consider the possibility of the supernatural.
It's that classic horror movie trope, the denial of the obvious.
But in this case, it plays right into Freddy's hands.
The longer the town remains ignorant, the more time Freddy has to regain his strength.
And while all this is going on, Freddy starts appearing in Laurie's dreams.
He's weak at first, almost pathetic.
Reliant on Jason's kills to fuel his resurrection.
We don't often see Freddy in such a vulnerable state.
And then things really go wild at that rave scene.
Jason just cuts loose, a total massacre.
But here's the interesting part. Freddy's actually annoyed by it all.
Like, hey, I'm supposed to be the star here.
He never intended for Jason to steal the show.
It's the first sign of a rift in their partnership.
So Laurie and her friends realize they can't just wait to become victims.
They come up with this daring plan.
Lure Jason back to his home turf, Camp Crystal Lake.
And then somehow pull Freddy into the real world.
Or he's vulnerable.
Fight fire with fire, that's the idea.
But they have no idea what they're truly up against.
So things are about to get a whole lot more complicated.
Oh yeah, trust me, they are.
But we'll save all those twists and turns for part 2 of our deep dive into Freddy versus Jason.
You won't want to miss it.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Freddy versus Jason.
Now, we've talked about the plot, but let's dig a little deeper into the people behind those iconic masks.
The actors who brought these horror legends to life.
First up, we have to talk about the man, the myth, the legend. Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger.
He owned that role, you know?
Absolutely. He'd been playing Freddy for so long, he just embodies the character.
What I find really fascinating about his performance in this film is the added layer of frustration, almost desperation.
Right. Like he's not in control, he's struggling to regain his power.
It adds this whole new dimension to Freddy.
And then you have Ken Kersinger as Jason Voorhees.
He was actually the 7th actor to play Jason.
Can you believe that? 7 actors.
But Kersinger, he brought something special to the role.
He's physically imposing, that's for sure.
He really conveys that sense of unstoppable force, that brutality.
You really believe he could go toe-to-toe with Freddy.
And it's amazing how much he can communicate with just his movements and expressions.
You know, even though Jason doesn't speak, you can feel the rage, the pain, all those years of torment just radiating off of him.
It's subtle but powerful.
Now, this film was directed by Ronnie Yu,
who had a background in both action and horror.
And you can definitely see his influence in the fight choreography.
Absolutely. The fight scenes are brutal, fast-paced.
It's like watching a Clash of the Titans, literally.
Freddy, with his speed and agility, using those claws and his dream powers.
And Jason just relying on pure brute force.
It's a visual spectacle, that's for sure.
And you can't forget about the setting, Camp Crystal Lake.
Oh yeah, that place is creepy.
Isolated, eerie. Every corner seems like it's hiding some dark secret.
It's like the perfect battleground for these two horror icons.
Now, this movie It definitely embraces those classic slasher tropes.
You've got the group of teenagers, the jump scares, the over-the-top gore.
But it also subverts some of those tropes in interesting ways.
Like the character of Laurie.
She's not your typical damsel in distress.
She's proactive, resourceful. She's not afraid to fight back.
She drives a lot of the action, makes some tough choices.
It's refreshing to see a horror movie heroine who's not just a victim.
And beyond all the blood and guts, the film actually touches on some pretty heavy themes.
Trauma, memory, the power of fear.
That's all woven into the story.
It adds a layer of depth to the characters and their motivations.
It makes you think,
It's not just about who wins the fight.
it's about how these characters confront their inner demons.
Exactly.
Now, I will admit, some of the CGI hasn't aged all that well.
Yeah, that's true.
And some of the dialogue is a bit, well, cheesy.
But that's part of its charm, I think.
It doesn't take itself too seriously.
It's fun, it's over the top, and sometimes that's exactly what you want from a horror movie.
I agree, it's a blast to watch.
A pure horror spectacle.
Before we move on, I have to ask you about the ending.
Oh yeah, that ending.
Jason emerges from the lake, holding Freddy's severed head.
But then Freddy winks at the audience.
What did you make of that?
It's brilliant. It leaves you with so many questions.
Did Jason truly win? Is Freddy really gone?
It's a classic ambiguous ending.
Makes you think, and that's what good horror should do.
It sticks with you long after the credits roll.
We're back for the final round of our Freddy vs. Jason deep dive.
We've covered the plot, the characters, the filmmaking.
But now it's time to get to the heart of what this movie is really about.
Beyond all the blood and guts and special effects.
This film actually has some pretty thought-provoking ideas lurking beneath the surface.
And I think it all boils down to that ambiguous ending.
Jason walking out of Camp Crystal Lake.
Holding Freddy's severed head, seemingly victorious.
But then, that wink,
Freddy winks at the audience, lets out that chilling laugh.
it completely messes with your expectations.
You're left wondering, is this really the end for Freddy?
Could he somehow still be out there?
I think that's what makes the ending so effective.
It doesn't give you a clear-cut resolution.
No definitive winner or loser.
It leaves you with questions, with a sense of unease.
It taps into that primal fear that evil can never truly be defeated.
No matter how many times you knock it down, it always finds a way to come back.
And it makes you question that whole idea of good versus evil.
If Jason is the one who walks away with Freddy's head, does that make him the good guy?
Are they both just forces of destruction, just in different forms?
It's a question with no easy answers.
And I think that's the brilliance of it.
It forces you to confront those uncomfortable truths about the nature of evil. It's not black and white, it's messy, it's complicated.
And when you think about it, both Freddy and Jason represent different kinds of fear that haunt us.
Freddy embodies those psychological terrors, those nightmares that invade our minds.
Those anxieties we carry, the things that keep us up at night.
And Jason represents that raw physical violence.
The danger that lurks in the real world.
Those fears are always present, even if they're not manifested as wisecracking dream demons or hockey-masked slashers.
And I think that's the point the movie is trying to make.
The fight against fear is never truly over.
It's something we have to constantly grapple with, both individually and as a society.
So even though Freddy vs. Jason doesn't give us a clear winner,
It suggests that the struggle against our fears is ongoing.
it's a battle we have to fight every single day.
And that's what makes this movie more than just a mindless horror flick.
It's a reflection on the different faces of fear and how we try to cope with them.
It gets under your skin, makes you think about things you might not want to think about.
And for me, that's a sign of a truly effective horror film. So, final thoughts on Freddy vs. Jason.
I have to say, it exceeded my expectations.
Really?
It's entertaining, well-made, and surprisingly thought-provoking.
Yeah, I agree. It's a wild ride.
It delivers on the gore, the scares, those iconic character clashes.
And it sparks debate and discussion even all these years later.
It's a worthy addition to both franchises, that's for sure.
I'd give it a solid 4 out of 5 stars.
I'm with you there, 4 stars.
A must-watch for any horror fan.
Absolutely.
And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into Freddy vs. Jason.
We hope you enjoyed this journey into the heart of horror.
And if you did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into all sorts of fascinating topics.
Until next time, stay curious out there